He got the call at 3:18 a.m., a nurse whispering that a 7-year-old girl covered in cigarette burns was about to be released back to the woman who put them there. By sunrise, 69 Hell's Angels had surrounded the hospital like a wall of leather and steel, and the stepmother arrived with lawyers, cameras, and a smile that could cut glass. What happened next would either save an innocent child or destroy every man willing to protect her. Hold up, before the story starts, I need to know, where are you watching from and what time is it? Drop your city in the comments. And listen, if stories about redemption, justice, and protecting the innocent matter to you, hit subscribe right now. You're about to hear how one phone call at 3 a.m. sparked a standoff that made national headlines. Now let's get into the story. The phone buzzed at exactly 3:18 a.m. Zedekiah Kane didn't flinch. He'd been awake for hours already, hunched over the engine of his Harley in the dim glow of his garage, grease under his nails and the radio muttering classic rock into the silence. Insomnia was an old companion, had been since Afghanistan, since the explosion that carved a scar from his temple to his jaw, since the day he came home to find everything he loved already gone. The phone buzzed again. He wiped his hands on a rag and squinted at the screen. Unknown number. At this hour, unknown numbers meant trouble, bill collectors, drunk dials, or someone looking to start something they couldn't finish. He almost let it ring out. Almost. Something made him pick up. Yeah. His voice was gravel and smoke. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice, barely above a whisper, shaking like autumn leaves. Is this Zedekiah Kane? From the Florida chapter. Zed straightened. The tone wasn't right. This wasn't a threat. This was fear. Depends who's asking. My name is Linda. I'm a nurse at Mercy General. Another pause, longer this time, like she was checking over her shoulder. I'm calling because there's a little girl here. 7 years old. Her name is Selena. Zed's hand tightened around the phone. He said nothing, but his jaw clenched. They brought her in 3 days ago, Linda continued, words tumbling faster now. Broken arm. Bruises up and down her back. Cigarette burns on her wrists. Her voice cracked. The stepmother said she fell down the stairs. Zed's eyes drifted to the photo pinned on the wall beside his workbench. A little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, frozen forever at 5 years old. His chest went tight. Why are you calling me? Because they're discharging her in 4 hours. Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. The stepmother has a lawyer. She has papers. And no one here is stopping her. No one is asking the right questions. I tried calling child services twice. They said they'd look into it. She let out a bitter laugh. That girl is going back to the woman who's hurting her, and I can't. I don't know what else to do. Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Why me? Zed asked quietly. Because Selena's mother, her real mother, she died 2 years ago. Cancer. But before she did, she used to volunteer at the Veterans Center on Wilson Street. You were there. You helped her family once. Linda hesitated. She told me if anything ever happened to her daughter, if Selena was ever in danger, she said there was one man who'd come. A man who understood what it meant to protect the ones who couldn't protect themselves. Zed closed his eyes. The weight of old ghosts pressed against his ribs. What's the stepmother's name? Maggie Gyllenhaal. He committed it to memory, like loading a round into a chamber. Don't let them discharge that girl, Zed said, voice low and final. Not until I get there. I'll try, but you'll do more than try. He was already moving, pulling his vest off the hook, the leather worn soft and heavy with patches that told stories most people didn't want to hear. And Linda? You did the right thing. He hung up. For a moment, Zedekiah Kane stood alone in his garage, surrounded by the smell of motor oil and old regrets. Then he scrolled through his contacts and hit a name, Sammy, road captain. 2 rings. Zed? The hell time is it? Time to ride. Zed's voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that came before storms. I need the chapter. All of them. Mercy General Hospital. Dawn. What's the play? Zed looked at the photo on the wall one last time, the daughter he couldn't save. We're keeping a promise. By the time the Florida sun began to crack the horizon, 69 Harleys were already thundering south on the interstate, engines roaring like a war drum, leather and chrome cutting through the morning mist. And in room 307 of Mercy General, a little girl named Selina lay clutching a stuffed rabbit, unaware that an army of angels was coming for her. But not the kind anyone expected. The fluorescent lights in Mercy General's pediatric wing hummed like dying wasps. Room 307 sat at the end of the hall, door half open, the kind of quiet that felt wrong. Inside, a little girl lay in a bed too big for her, bandages wrapped around her left arm, bruises blooming purple and yellow across her collarbone. Her name was Selina, and she was 7 years old, though she looked smaller, hollowed out, like something vital had been scooped away. In her good hand, she clutched a stuffed rabbit with one torn ear. Her best friend Beth had given it to her last year, back when her mother was still alive. Back when home still meant safety. Now it meant something else entirely. A nurse, Linda, the one who'd made the call, stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Across from her, 2 administrators shuffled papers, their faces carefully neutral in that bureaucratic way that meant they'd already made up their minds. "The stepmother has legal custody," one of them said, not looking up. "The paperwork is in order." "The paperwork doesn't explain cigarette burns," Linda shot back, voice low but sharp. "It doesn't explain why a 7-year-old falls down the stairs 3 times in 6 months. We've notified Child Services, who said they'd look into it." Linda's hands clenched. "You know what that means. It means nothing. It means by the time they get around to investigating, this girl will be—" She stopped herself, glanced at Selina, who was staring at the ceiling, eyes glassy and distant. The administrator sighed. "Look, I understand your concern, but we can't hold her indefinitely without cause. The stepmother is coming at 8. If there's no legal intervention by then she goes home," Linda finished bitterly. "Back to the woman who put her here." Selina didn't react. She'd learned not to. The memory came unbidden, sliding into her mind like water through cracked glass. 2 months ago. The kitchen. Selina had dropped a plate. An accident, just an accident, and Maggie's smile had gone cold and sharp. "Clumsy little thing, aren't you?" Selina had whispered an apology, but Maggie was already moving, fingers wrapping around her wrist, nails digging in. "Your father works himself to the bone for you. And this is how you repay us? Breaking things? Making messes. I didn't mean. You never mean to." Maggie's voice had been silk over razors. "But you always do." Then came the closet. The dark. The lock clicking shut. Hours alone with nothing but her own breath and the spiders in the corners. When her father came home, Maggie had smiled sweetly and said Selina was upstairs napping. He never checked. He never asked. Selina blinked, pulling herself back to room 307. The rabbit's fur was damp where her tears had fallen. The sound of boots in the hallway made Linda's head snap up. Heavy. Deliberate. Multiple sets. The administrators froze mid-sentence as the footsteps grew louder closer, accompanied by the faint jingle of chains and the creak of leather. Then the door swung open. Zedekias Kane filled the doorway. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting across his face like a lightning strike and tattoos crawling up his forearms. His Hell's Angels vest was worn and patched, the emblem of the Florida chapter stitched across his back. Behind him, 2 more bikers stood silent as sentinels, arms crossed, faces unreadable. The room went cold. The administrators straightened, fear flickering across their expressions before they tried to mask it with authority. "Excuse me, this is a restricted." "I'm here for the girl," Zed said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath. "Selina." Linda exhaled in relief. "You came." "I told you I would." One of the administrators stepped forward, hand raised like a traffic cop. "Sir, you can't just." "I'm not asking permission." Zed's eyes, pale blue, unblinking, shifted to the man. "I'm telling you that girl doesn't leave this hospital until someone who actually gives a damn makes sure she's safe." The administrator opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Something about the way Zed stood, the way the other bikers waited behind him like coiled springs, made the words die in his throat. Zed moved past them, crossing to the bedside. Selina stared up at him, eyes wide, rabbit clutched tight to her chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You're him." Zed frowned. Him. The man from Mom's photo. Her lip trembled. She said if I was ever scared, if I ever needed help, you'd come. Zed's breath caught. He crouched down slowly, bringing himself to her eye level. Your mom and we knew each other a long time ago. She was a good woman. She's gone now. I know, kid. I'm sorry. Selina studied his face, the scar, the hard lines, the ink, and something in her seemed to settle, just a fraction. Are you really a Hell's Angel? Yeah. People say you're bad. Zed's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. People say a lot of things. Are you here to hurt someone? No. He reached out, gently adjusting the blanket that had slipped from her shoulder. I'm here to make sure no one hurts you. Outside, the rumble of motorcycles echoed through the parking lot, 67 more engines idling, waiting. And somewhere across town, Maggie Geilinghall was getting dressed, preparing to reclaim what she believed was hers. Maggie Geilinghall had perfected her smile over 42 years of practice. It was a careful thing, warm enough to disarm, cold enough to cut. She adjusted it now in the bathroom mirror of her pristine colonial home, smoothing her blonde hair into a neat bun, applying lipstick the color of expensive wine. Behind her, reflected in the glass, her husband Trey sat slumped at the kitchen table, head in his hands. You need to pull yourself together, she said without turning around. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Trey didn't move. Maggie, maybe we should. Should what? She turned, smile fixed in place. Let some biker gang intimidate us? Let them kidnap our daughter. She's my daughter, Trey said quietly. And they're not kidnapping anyone. The nurse called them because she's a hysterical woman who doesn't understand how children lie for attention. Maggie crossed the room, placing a manicured hand on his shoulder. Her touch was light, almost tender. Selina fell down the stairs, honey. You know how clumsy she is. The bruises, the arm, it was an accident. Trey's jaw worked. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. The burns on her wrists. She plays with matches, Maggie said smoothly. We've talked about this. She's acting out because she misses her mother. It's grief, Trey. Not abuse. Her fingers tightened, just slightly. Unless you're saying I would hurt a child. Your child. Is that what you think of me? The question hung in the air like a noose. No, Trey whispered finally. No, of course not. Good. Maggie kissed the top of his head. Then let's go get our girl and put this ugliness behind us. I've already spoken to our lawyer. Everything is in order. By the time they arrived at Mercy General, a news van was already parked outside. Maggie had made sure of it. One carefully worded call to a reporter she knew. My stepdaughter is being held against her will by a motorcycle gang, and the media circus had begun. She stepped out of the car, heels clicking on asphalt, face composed in that perfect mask of maternal concern. A reporter rushed forward, microphone extended. Mrs. Geilinghall, is it true the Hell's Angels are preventing you from seeing your daughter? It's heartbreaking, Maggie said, voice trembling just enough. I don't know what they want or why they're doing this. Selina needs her family. She needs to come home. A single tear, rehearsed, flawless, slid down her cheek. We just want our little girl back. The camera ate it up. Behind her, Trey stood silent, hands shoved in his pockets, looking anywhere but at the lens. Then Maggie saw them. The parking lot was lined with motorcycles, dozens of them, chrome glinting in the morning sun, engines rumbling low like distant thunder. Men in leather vests stood in loose formation near the hospital entrance, arms crossed, faces hard. At the center of them all stood a man with a scar bisecting his face and eyes that had seen too much. Zedekias Kane. Maggie's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind it, calculation, cold and quick. She walked toward him, heels clicking, lawyer trailing behind, Trey reluctantly following. The bikers didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. When she was 10 feet away, she stopped. You must be the one holding my daughter hostage, she said pleasantly. Your stepdaughter, Zed corrected. And I'm not holding anyone. I'm making sure she stays safe. Safe. Maggie laughed, bright, incredulous. From her own family? Do you have any idea how insane that sounds? About as insane as cigarette burns on a 7-year-old. Maggie's expression didn't change, but her eyes went flat. Those were accidents. She plays with things she shouldn't. Children do that. Children also tell the truth when they're scared. And they also lie when they want attention. Maggie took a step closer, voice dropping to a hiss only he could hear. You don't scare me, Mr. Kane. I have lawyers. I have money. I have every legal right to walk through those doors and take her home. And there's nothing you or your little gang can do to stop me. Zed didn't blink. You're right. I'm not here to scare you. Then what are you here for? I'm here to stop you. The silence stretched taut as wire. Maggie tilted her head, smile returning, sharp now victorious. With what? Threats? Intimidation? That might work in whatever backwoods bar you crawled out of, but this is the real world. I have documentation. Medical records. A lawyer who's already drafting harassment charges against you and every single man standing behind you. She leaned in, voice sweet as poison. So go ahead. Try to stop me. See how that works out. She turned on her heel and strode toward the entrance. Zed didn't move. Behind him, Sammy murmured, She's got resources, brother. Money. Connections. Yeah. Zed's voice was quiet, steady. But we've got something better. What's that? The truth. He pulled out his phone. And a brotherhood that doesn't back down. Inside room 307, Selena clutched her rabbit tighter as footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp, deliberate, coming closer. Maggie's smile was already fixed in place. Sammy Doc Martinez had seen worse standoffs. Fallujah. Helmand Province. A desert checkpoint where the sand turned red and the screaming didn't stop for 3 days. This, a hospital parking lot in central Florida at 8 in the morning, shouldn't have felt like a battlefield. But it did. He stood near the entrance, arms crossed over his road captain patch, watching the news vans multiply like locusts. 3 had become 5. 5 had become 8. Satellite dishes sprouted from their roofs, cameras swiveling toward the line of motorcycles that surrounded Mercy General like a steel barricade. Behind him, 67 bikers held formation. They weren't shouting, weren't revving engines or making threats. They just stood, silent, solid, immovable. Men with graying beards and faded tattoos, mechanics and welders and veterans who traded war zones for highway miles. The kind of men society had written off as dangerous, forgetting they were also fathers, brothers, survivors. Sammy checked his phone. A text from Zed, hold the line. No one gets past unless I say so. He pocketed it and turned to the man beside him, a broad-shouldered biker called Wrench, named for the tool he always carried and occasionally used to settle disagreements. Media's eating this up, Wrench muttered. We're gonna be all over the 6 o'clock news. Let them watch, Sammy said. Maybe someone will finally ask the right questions. A reporter broke from the pack, jogging toward them with a cameraman in tow. Young, eager, hungry for a story that would make his career. Excuse me, sir, can you tell us why the Hells Angels are surrounding this hospital? Sammy's expression didn't change. We're here to make sure a child stays safe. From who? From whoever wants to hurt her. Are you saying the stepmother? I'm saying we're here until we know that little girl won't be going back to a place where she gets cigarette burns and broken bones. Sammy's voice was level, but there was granite underneath. You got a problem with that? The reporter hesitated, glancing at his cameraman. The red light on the camera blinked steadily, recording everything. People are saying you're intimidating hospital staff. That you're preventing the family from. People say a lot of things, Sammy interrupted. Doesn't make them true. Behind them, more bikes rumbled into the lot, stragglers from neighboring chapters who'd heard the call and come running. The formation expanded, tightened. A message written in leather and chrome. You want this kid? You'll have to go through all of us. The reporter opened his mouth to ask another question, but Sammy had already turned away. Inside his head, Zedekias Kane was 7 years in the past. He stood in the hospital corridor, phone pressed to his ear, but his mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker, where the fluorescent lights buzzed the same way and the antiseptic smell burned his nostrils just as sharp. Germany. 2018. The military hospital where they'd flown him after the IED tore through his convoy. He'd woken up with a new scar and a hole in his memory. The doctors said he was lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky the shrapnel missed his brain by 2 inches. But luck was a relative thing. It was his ex-wife who told him. She'd flown in from Florida, face hollow, eyes red-rimmed. She sat beside his bed and said the words slowly, like maybe if she said them soft enough, they'd hurt less. Emma's gone, Zed. His 5-year-old daughter. The little girl with pigtails and his eyes and a laugh that sounded like bells. There was an accident. A car ran a red light. She didn't suffer. Zed had stared at the ceiling. He didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just lay there while something inside him, something vital, something human, went cold and still. Later, after the funeral he wasn't strong enough to attend. After the divorce papers and the discharge and the long nights in an empty apartment, he made himself a promise. Never again. Never again would he fail a child who needed him. The memory released him. Zed blinked, pulling himself back to the present. Selina was watching him from her hospital bed, rabbit clutched tight, eyes too knowing for 7 years old. "You okay?" she asked quietly. He almost laughed. A broken kid asking if he was okay. "Yeah, kid. I'm good." "You looked sad." Zed crouched down beside her bed. "I was thinking about someone I lost a long time ago. Someone who would have liked you." "Who?" "My daughter. Her name was Emma." Selina's expression softened. "Is she in heaven with my mom?" "Maybe." Zed's throat tightened. "I like to think so." "Do you miss her?" "Every day." Selina reached out with her good hand and touched the scar on his face, gentle, curious. "Is that why you came for me? Because you couldn't save her?" The question hit him like a fist to the chest. Zed looked at this little girl, bruised, broken, still brave enough to ask the hard questions, and something shifted inside him. The cold, still thing that had lived in his chest for 7 years cracked open, just a fraction. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's why." Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. More chapters arriving. More brothers answering the call. And in the corridor, Maggie Geilinghol's heels clicked closer, each step a countdown. Selina's fingers tightened around Zed's hand. "Don't let her take me," she whispered. "Please." "I won't." Zed's voice was iron and ash. "I promise." The door swung open. Maggie stood framed in the doorway, lawyer beside her, smile perfect and poisonous. "Hello, sweetheart," she said to Selina, voice dripping false warmth. "It's time to come home." Selina shrank back against the pillows, rabbit pressed to her chest like a shield. Maggie's smile never wavered. She stepped into the room, her lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit named Gordon Price, close behind. In his hands was a leather portfolio stuffed with documents. "Mrs. Geilinghol," Linda the nurse said, voice tight. "Selina's still under observation. The doctors haven't cleared her for." "The doctors have had 3 days." Maggie's tone was pleasant but firm. She turned to the hospital administrator who'd followed them in. "I've been patient. But my daughter needs to be home, in familiar surroundings, not traumatized by strangers." Her eyes flicked to Zed, lingering on his scar, his vest. "Especially not men like him." Zed didn't move from Selina's bedside. "She's not going anywhere until Child Services clears it." "Funny you should mention that." Price opened his portfolio, extracting a thick stack of papers. "We have documentation from Selina's pediatrician, Dr. Helen Marsh, detailing a history of self-harming behavior. Banging her head against walls. Scratching herself. Attention-seeking incidents that escalated after her biological mother's death." Linda's face went white. "That's not." "It's all here." Price handed the papers to the administrator, who scanned them with growing unease. "Signed by a licensed physician. The injuries aren't from abuse, they're self-inflicted. Tragic, yes, but a mental health issue, not a criminal one." Zed's jaw clenched. "You're saying a 7-year-old gave herself cigarette burns?" "I'm saying grief manifests in disturbing ways." Maggie's voice was soft, sympathetic, perfectly calibrated. We've been trying to get Selena help. Therapy. Medication. But these people. She gestured vaguely toward the window, where the rumble of motorcycles still echoed. They've turned a family tragedy into a spectacle. The administrator shifted uncomfortably. If there's medical documentation. There isn't. Everyone turned. Sammy stood in the doorway, phone in hand, face grim. Behind him, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a briefcase pushed past. Angela Torres, legal aid attorney and Sammy's oldest friend. Dr. Helen Marsh retired 8 months ago, Angela said, striding into the room. I just spoke with her. She never treated Selena Geilinghol. Never signed those documents. She turned to Price. Which makes them forgeries. Which makes your client a liar. The room went still. Price's expression flickered, just for a second, before smoothing back into professional neutrality. That's a serious accusation without proof. Angela pulled out her phone, turning the screen toward the administrator. Here's the email from Dr. Marsh's office. Timestamp, 20 minutes ago. She's willing to testify that her signature was forged. She looked at Maggie. Want to keep going? Or should we talk about the hospital records from Selena's previous ER visits that mysteriously disappeared from the system? Maggie's smile finally cracked. Not much, just a hairline fracture in the perfect mask, but enough. This is harassment, she said coldly. You're manufacturing evidence to support a false narrative. Am I? Angela crossed her arms. Then let's bring in child services for a formal interview. Right now. With Selena. No lawyers, no parents in the room. Just her and a trained investigator. Absolutely not, Price interjected. My client has rights. So does that little girl. The administrator looked between them, sweat beading on his forehead. I think we need to. The door opened again. A woman entered, small, nervous, holding the hand of a girl about Selena's age with braided hair and wide brown eyes. I'm sorry to interrupt, the woman said quietly. I'm Karen Fletcher. This is my daughter, Beth. She's Selena's best friend from school. She glanced at Selena, who'd gone very still. Beth has something she needs to say. Maggie's face went rigid. This is inappropriate. A child can't. Let her speak. Zed's voice was quiet but absolute. Beth looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked at Selena, then at the adults crowding the room. Her voice came out small but clear. Selena told me her stepmom hurts her. Silence. What did she say exactly? Angela asked gently, crouching to Beth's level. She said. Beth's lip trembled. She said her stepmom throws her down the stairs when her dad's at work, and locks her in the closet, and burns her with cigarettes when she cries. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She made me promise not to tell because she said no one would believe her anyway. Maggie's lawyer moved fast. This is hearsay from a child who's clearly been coached. By who? Zed's voice was steel. By us? We didn't even know this kid existed until 2 minutes ago. Nevertheless, nothing. Angela turned to the administrator. You now have testimony from a witness, evidence of forged medical documents, and a child who's terrified to go home. If you discharge Selena into this woman's custody, I'll have an injunction filed before she makes it to the parking lot. And when this goes to court, and it will go to court, you'll be explaining why you ignored every red flag. The administrator's face had gone gray. I need to consult with the hospital's legal team. You do that. Angela's smile was sharp. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Maggie stood frozen, the mask finally crumbling. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, knuckles white. When she spoke, her voice was low, venomous. You have no idea what you've just done. She turned and swept from the room, Price hurrying after her. In the corridor, just before the door closed, her lawyer's voice carried back, quiet but clear enough. They just declared war on the wrong woman. Trey Caldwell was 3 whiskeys deep when Zedekias Kane found him. The Crossroads Motel Bar was the kind of place people went to disappear, Dim lighting, peeling wallpaper, a bartender who'd learned long ago not to ask questions. Trey sat hunched at the far end, tie loosened, jacket crumpled on the stool beside him. The television above the bar played the evening news on mute, closed captions scrolling beneath images of motorcycles and hospital parking lots. Hell's Angels block hospital, claimed to protect 7-year-old girl. Trey stared at his glass like it held answers. The door opened. Heavy boots on linoleum. Trey didn't look up, didn't care. Then a shadow fell across the bar, and a voice, rough as gravel, familiar from the hospital, said, "Buy you a drink?" Trey's head snapped up. Zedekias Kane stood beside him, still wearing his vest, still carrying that scar like a war medal. The bartender tensed, hand drifting toward the phone, but Zed just held up 2 fingers and nodded toward Trey's empty glass. "I'm good," Trey muttered. "You don't look good." Zed sat down uninvited. "You look like a man who knows he's drowning but can't figure out how to swim." "What do you want?" "To talk." "We've got nothing to talk about." "Your daughter would disagree." Trey flinched like he'd been slapped. He stared at the bar, jaw working. "She's fine. Maggie. Maggie takes care of her." "Yeah." Zed's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. "That why she's got burns on her wrists? Why her arms in a cast?" "She's clumsy. She. Don't." Zed's hand came down on the bar, not hard, but firm enough to make Trey's glass jump. "Don't insult either of us by repeating her lies. You know what's happening to your kid. You just don't want to see it." Trey's face crumpled. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." For a long moment, Trey said nothing. The television flickered, another news anchor, another headline. Custody battle brewing over Florida girl. His reflection stared back at him from the mirror behind the bar, hollow-eyed and haunted. "Maggie's not. She wasn't always like this," he said finally. "When we met, she was different. Warm. Caring. After my wife died, she helped me through the grief. Helped with Selena." His voice cracked. "I thought she loved us." "What changed?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe I just didn't want to see." Trey's hands shook as he reached for his glass. "She started small. Criticizing how I raised Selena. Saying I was too soft. That the kid needed discipline." He drank. "Then she took over the finances. Said I was bad with money. She got her name on the house, the accounts. I told myself it was practical. Smart." "And Selena?" Trey's eyes squeezed shut. "I'd come home and find her locked in her room. Maggie said she'd misbehaved, needed a timeout. I believed her. I wanted to believe her." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Then one night, I heard Selena crying through the door. She was begging. 'Please, I'll be good, I promise.' And I stood there. I didn't open the door. I went downstairs and poured myself a drink." "Why?" "Because I was scared." The words came out broken, raw. "Scared that if I questioned Maggie, she'd leave. Take everything. The house, the money, my reputation. I'd be alone again." He laughed bitterly. "So I chose comfort over my kid. I chose a lie because the truth was too expensive." Zed studied him, this broken man who'd traded his daughter's safety for his own peace of mind. Part of him wanted to drag Trey outside and teach him what real pain felt like. But another part, the part that understood fear, understood failure, recognized the weight of guilt that was already crushing him. "You know what the worst part is." Trey's voice was barely audible. "This morning, when Beth told everyone what Selena said, I wanted to defend Maggie. I wanted to call that little girl a liar." Tears streamed down his face. "What kind of father does that make me?" "The kind who's scared," Zed said quietly. "But also the kind who can still choose different." "It's too late." "It's not." Zed leaned closer. "Your daughter is alive. She's scared, she's hurt, but she's alive. You can still be the father she needs. But you have to do it now. Today. Because if Maggie gets her hands on that kid again." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Trey wiped his face with shaking hands. "She'll destroy me. She'll take everything. Maybe. But you'll have your kid back. You'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Zed stood, dropping cash on the bar. Money and houses, you can replace those. But your daughter? You only get one chance to save her. And brother, you're running out of time. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I failed my kid too. I was overseas when she needed me most. Came home to an empty house and a casket I was too broken to stand beside. His voice went rough. Don't be me. Don't spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have done different. The door closed behind him. Trey sat alone, the television flickering overhead. On the screen, Maggie stood before a cluster of microphones, face composed, playing the grieving stepmother for maximum sympathy. Behind her, protesters had gathered, some supporting her, others holding signs, "Protect Selena and believe the child." The nation was watching. And somewhere in that hospital room, a little girl clutched a stuffed rabbit and wondered if anyone would finally choose her. Trey's phone sat on the bar. One call, that's all it would take. One call to child services. One testimony that would shatter Maggie's carefully constructed lies. His hand hovered over it, trembling. Then, finally, he picked it up. The call came at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after Trey's confession. Maggie Geilinghall arrived at Mercy General with an army of her own, 2 private security guards, her lawyer Gordon Price, and a court order she'd somehow managed to extract from a judge who owed someone a favor. The paper was crisp, official, stamped with all the right seals. Temporary emergency custody pending full hearing. Linda called Zed before Maggie made it through the parking lot. By the time Maggie's heels clicked across the asphalt, 69 Harleys were already idling in formation, a wall of chrome and leather blocking every entrance to the pediatric wing. News vans lined the street, cameras rolling, helicopters circling overhead. What had started as a local story had exploded into something bigger. The nation was watching. Maggie stopped 10 feet from the line, security flanking her, Price holding the court order like a weapon. Behind her, a growing crowd of onlookers pressed against the police barricade, some holding signs supporting her, others demanding justice for Selena. Zedekias Kane stood at the center of the formation, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. "You're blocking a legal court order," Price announced, voice projecting for the cameras. "Step aside or face federal charges for obstruction." Zed didn't move. "That paper's worth about as much as the doctor's signature you forged." Maggie's smile was winter cold. "This was signed by Judge Morrison 2 hours ago. It's legal. It's binding. And you have no authority to." "You take one more step toward that kid," Zed said quietly, voice carrying like distant thunder, "and you'll have to go through all of us." The bikers shifted, a subtle tightening of the line, leather creaking, chains rattling. Not a threat. A promise. Price's face reddened. "This is kidnapping. Unlawful detention. Every single one of you will be. Let them try." The voice came from behind Maggie. She turned. Trey stood at the edge of the crowd, face haggard but resolute. Beside him, Angela Torres held a different set of papers, and behind them, 2 officers from Child Protective Services waited with grim expressions. "Trey." Maggie's mask slipped for just a second. "What are you?" "I called them." His voice shook but held. "I told them everything. The locks. The burns. The stairs." He stepped forward. "I told them the truth." Angela moved past him, handing documents to the nearest police officer. "Emergency protective order, signed 30 minutes ago by Judge Chun. Selena Caldwell is now under state protection pending full investigation into allegations of child abuse." She looked at Price. "Your custody order is void." Silence. Then Maggie lunged, not at Trey, but toward the hospital entrance, security moving with her. The bikers closed ranks instantly, a human wall she slammed against like a wave breaking on rocks. "Get out of my way." Her voice cracked, the perfect facade finally shattering. "She's mine. I raised her, I fed her, I—" "You hurt her," Zed said flatly. Maggie's eyes went wild. She clawed at the nearest biker, screaming, makeup running, the cameras capturing every second. Security tried to pull her back, but she fought them too, a woman unraveling in real time. "You can't take her. You don't understand what I've sacrificed. What I've. Police moved in. Hands on her arms, voices calm and professional, reading rights she couldn't hear over her own screaming. The crowd watched, some in shock, others in vindication, as Maggie Gyllenhaal was led away in handcuffs, still shrieking about injustice and lies and ungrateful children. The cameras never stopped rolling. When the squad car pulled away, Zed turned to Sammy. It's done. It's done, brother. Behind them, through the hospital window, a small face pressed against the glass. Selena, watching, rabbit clutched tight. For the first time in 3 days, she smiled. The courtroom was standing room only. 1 week after the standoff, Judge Patricia Chen's chambers had become ground zero for a case that had captured national attention. Reporters lined the gallery. Advocates crowded the aisles. And at the front, a little girl named Selena sat between Angela Torres and a victim's advocate, wearing a clean dress and holding a stuffed rabbit with one torn ear. Zedekias Kane sat 3 rows back, Sammy beside him, both wearing clean shirts under their vests. Around them, a dozen other bikers sat silent as sentries. They'd been subpoenaed as witnesses, but more than that, they'd come to keep a promise. Maggie Gyllenhaal sat across the aisle in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, face scrubbed of makeup, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd smiled for cameras. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but she stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, defeated but unrepentant. Trey sat alone in the front row, head bowed, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Judge Chen entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The bailiff called the court to order. This is an emergency custody hearing for Selena Marie Caldwell, age 7. Chen's voice filled the room. We're here to determine permanent placement following allegations of abuse. She looked at Selena. Sweetheart, I know this is scary, but I need you to tell me what happened. Can you do that? Selena's fingers tightened on the rabbit. She nodded. Angela guided her to the witness stand, a chair raised on a platform that made her look even smaller. A microphone was adjusted to her height. Every eye in the room fixed on her. Selena, Judge Chen said gently, did your stepmother ever hurt you? The little girl's voice came out barely above a whisper. Yes. Can you tell me how? Selena looked at the rabbit, then at Zed. He gave her the smallest nod. She locked me in the closet when I was bad. Sometimes for hours. Her voice grew steadier. And she pushed me down the stairs. 3 times. She said it was my fault for being clumsy. What about the burns on your wrists? She did that. Selena's lip trembled. With her cigarette. When I cried too loud. The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Chen's expression never changed, but something flickered in her eyes. Cold judicial fury. Did you tell anyone? I told my friend Beth. But I thought no one would believe me. Maggie said if I told, they'd take me away from Daddy and put me somewhere worse. Did your father know? Selena looked at Trey, who was openly weeping now. I think he knew. But he was scared too. Chen nodded slowly. One more question, sweetheart. Those men in the back, the bikers. Were you scared of them? Selena turned, looking directly at Zed. No. Why not? Because they came when no one else did. Her voice strengthened. People say bikers are bad, but they're the only ones who came for me. The silence that followed was absolute. Judge Chen looked at Maggie, who stared at the table, face rigid. Then at Trey, who couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Then at the bikers in the back, these men society had written off, who'd stood guard for a week straight because a child needed them. I've heard enough. Chen's gavel came down like a gunshot. Custody is permanently revoked from Maggie Gyllenhaal. Criminal charges will proceed. She looked at Trey. Mr. Caldwell, you'll undergo mandatory counseling and supervised visitation pending psychological evaluation. Trey nodded, broken but accepting. As for permanent placement, pending approval from Family Services, Selena will be placed with her paternal aunt in Orlando. Chen's expression softened just slightly. You're safe now, sweetheart. No one's going to hurt you again. Outside, as they led Maggie away, she finally turned, looked back at Selena with eyes full of something that might have been regret, or might have been rage. Then she was gone. Zed waited by the courthouse steps as people filed out. When Selina emerged, she broke away from Angela and ran to him, throwing her small arms around his waist. He crouched down, eye level with her. "You did good, kid. Will I see you again? Any time you need me." He pulled something from his vest, a small leather patch, carefully stitched. "This is for you." Selina took it, fingers tracing the words embroidered in gold thread, "Angel Child." "What does it mean?" "Means you're part of the family now. Means wherever you go, you've got 69 brothers watching your back." His scarred face softened. "Means you're never alone." She hugged him again, fierce and tight. Behind them, engines rumbled to life. 3 months later, Selina stood in the garage of her aunt's house in Orlando, watching Zed work on his Harley. She visited twice a month now, supervised at first, then just normal. Her Aunt Maria was kind, patient, nothing like Maggie. The nightmares were fading. The bruises had healed. She was 7 years old and learning how to be a kid again. "Hand me that wrench," Zed said, not looking up. Selina passed it over, grinning. She wore the angel child patch sewn onto a denim vest Maria had bought her, child-sized, covered in pins and patches from different chapters. A gift from the Brotherhood. Zed. "Yeah, kid. Do you still think about your daughter?" His hands paused on the engine. "Every day." "Does it still hurt?" "Yeah, but less than it used to." He glanced at her. "You help with that." "How?" "Because you remind me that sometimes you get a second chance. Not to replace what you lost, but to do better." He wiped his hands on a rag. "Emma would have liked you. I wish I could have met her." "Me too." Outside, the sound of motorcycles grew louder, the Florida chapter rolling in for their monthly meet. Sammy's voice called out, joking with Wrench about something. Life continuing, louder and brighter than before. A news segment had aired last week. Where are they now? The Hells Angels who saved Selina Caldwell. It showed footage of the standoff, the hearing, interviews with bikers talking about brotherhood and second chances. Public perception had shifted, not completely, never completely, but enough. Enough that when people saw the patch now, some of them smiled instead of flinched. Maggie was serving 8 years. Trey had completed counseling and earned supervised visitation rights, awkward at first, but slowly rebuilding. Beth still visited, bringing homework and stories from school. And Selina? She was healing. "You ready?" Zed asked, standing. "For what?" "Your first ride." Her eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really. Your aunt signed off on it. But you wear a helmet, you hold on tight, and you do exactly what I say. Got it?" "Got it." He lifted her onto the Harley, adjusted the helmet, way too big, practically swallowing her whole, and climbed on in front. The engine rumbled to life, vibrating through her small body like thunder. Slowly, carefully, they rolled out of the garage. The Florida chapter fell into formation around them, 69 bikes moving in perfect synchronization, chrome glinting in the afternoon sun. They rode through Orlando streets, past parks and houses and people who stopped to watch, some waving, some filming. Selina's hands gripped Zed's vest tight, the angel child patch visible over his shoulder. At a red light, Sammy pulled up alongside them, grinning. "How you doing, kiddo?" "This is awesome." Selina shouted over the engines. He laughed. "Welcome to the family." They rode for an hour, down highways and back roads, through tunnels where the engine roar echoed like music. And for the first time since her mother died, Selina felt something she'd almost forgotten. Safe. Protected. Free. When they finally pulled back into the garage, sun setting behind them in stripes of orange and gold, Selina slid off the bike with legs like jelly and a smile that wouldn't quit. "Can we do it again?" she asked breathlessly. "Anytime, kid." Zed ruffled her hair. "Anytime." Inside, Maria had dinner waiting. The Brotherhood filed in, gruff men with tattoos and scars, laughing and joking, filling the house with warmth. They ate together, told stories, included Selina like she'd always been part of them. Later, after they'd gone and the house was quiet, Selina lay in bed clutching her rabbit. The angel child patch sat on her nightstand, catching moonlight. She thought about Maggie, locked away where she couldn't hurt anyone. About her dad, trying to be better. About Beth and Maria and the bikers who'd become her family. But mostly she thought about Zed, and the daughter he'd lost, and the promise he'd kept. Some angels don't have wings, she thought, words from a story she'd heard. They ride steel and thunder. And they show up when the world looks away. Outside, a single motorcycle engine rumbled past, Zed heading home, keeping watch like he always did. Selena closed her eyes and for the first time in years, slept without nightmares. The girl was safe. The brotherhood had kept its promise. And sometimes, just sometimes, broken people found redemption in protecting the innocent. If you believe that family isn't always blood, that sometimes it's the strangers who show up when everyone else looks away, like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories like this. Also check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you.